Good morning. May I see your ID, sir?
Why? I'm just catching my train.
There have been some break-ins in the neighborhood. I need to know who you are.
I live here. I'm not doing anything wrong.
I didn't ask if you live here. Give me your ID.
I'm not required to.
If you refuse, I will cuff you right now. Last chance.
I gave you an order. If you don't get up and leave now, I will physically remove you for loitering and resisting arrest. Do you understand me? Officer, for the record, you are ordering me to leave a private establishment where I am a paying customer without presenting any probable cause for such an action. And you are threatening to use force. Is that your official statement? These words, captured with digital clarity by an Axon Body 3 camera, marked the precise moment Officer Ryan Sullivan's career ended. It was 2:32 p.m. on March 14, 2023. The exchange, lasting only a few seconds, initiated a chain of events that would be forensically documented, legally dissected, and ultimately result in the officer's professional and financial ruin. The official record, Case 92-C-118, details how a routine coffee break fueled by unsubstantiated racial bias escalated into a physical assault and a masterclass in the abuse of authority. The target of this unprovoked aggression was not a loiterer or a criminal, but Dr. Alastair Finch, a senior partner at a prestigious law firm and the very civil rights attorney who had recently spearheaded a landmark police reform lawsuit against the city. The confrontation, recorded from multiple angles by the coffee shop's 4K CCTV system in addition to the officer's own body cam, would provide irrefutable proof in a legal proceeding that would cost the now former officer a staggering $3 million and ensure he would never wear a badge again. But before the legal filings, before the internal affairs investigation, and before the devastating financial judgment, there was only the quiet, mundane atmosphere of an upscale coffee shop on a Tuesday afternoon. The air inside the Daily Grind smelled of roasted espresso beans and steamed milk, a comfortable aroma that settled over the low hum of quiet conversations and the gentle clicking of keyboards. Sunlight streamed through the large front window, illuminating dust motes dancing in the air. This was Dr. Alastair Finch's sanctuary, a third space between the pressures of his downtown office and the tranquility of his home. He sat at his usual table in the corner, a position that afforded him a clear view of the entrance but kept him away from the main flow of traffic. Before him sat a half-finished mug of black coffee and a state-of-the-art ultra-thin laptop. On its screen was a draft of a motion to dismiss, its dense legal text a testament to his profession. Dr. Finch was a man defined by precision and control. His suit, a tailored charcoal gray, was immaculate. His movements were economical and deliberate as he scrolled through the document, his brow furrowed in concentration. The baristas knew him by name, not because he was demanding, but because his routine was as consistent as the morning sunrise. One large black coffee, no sugar, and 2 hours of uninterrupted work. He was a portrait of calm competence, a man entirely at peace in his environment, unaware that he had been selected as the target for a demonstration of power. At 2:28 p.m., Officer Ryan Sullivan pushed through the glass door, the small bell above it announcing his arrival with a cheerful jingle that was entirely at odds with his demeanor. He was young, barely 24, and wore his uniform with the rigid posture of someone still new to its weight and authority. He had been on the force for 18 months, a period marked by 3 citizen complaints for aggressive conduct, all of which had been dismissed due to lack of evidence. He moved with a heavy-footed gait, his eyes scanning the room not with the observational calm of a veteran officer, but with the restless energy of a predator seeking a challenge. He got his coffee and took a seat at the counter, but he wasn't relaxing. The security footage from camera 3, positioned over the counter, shows him ignoring his phone, ignoring the other patrons, his gaze fixed almost exclusively on Dr. Finch. For 4 minutes and 12 seconds, Sullivan watched him. The omniscient narration of the footage, later analyzed by behavioral experts for the civil trial, would note that Sullivan's posture became progressively more aggressive. He saw not a lawyer working, but a black man who, in his biased worldview, looked out of place. The expensive suit, the confident composure, the focused work, in Sullivan's mind, these were not indicators of a professional, but the audacious markers of someone who needed to be put in his place. He constructed a narrative of suspicion from a scene of absolute normalcy. He decided Dr. Finch was a problem that needed solving. He finished his coffee in 2 quick gulps, the ceramic mug clattering as he set it down. He wiped his mouth with the back of his hand, stood up, and adjusted his duty belt. His path across the coffee shop floor was direct and purposeful. The hum of the espresso machine momentarily masked his footsteps, but as he approached the corner table, his shadow fell across the legal document on Dr. Finch's screen. He was about to initiate a conversation that was, for all intents and purposes, already a verdict in his own mind. It was an irreversible error in judgment, a single step that would lead him off a cliff he never saw coming. Dr. Finch looked up from his screen, his expression neutral, as Officer Sullivan stopped beside his table.
The officer's posture was a study in manufactured authority. His shoulders were thrown back, his chin was jutting forward, and his hand rested casually yet deliberately on the grip of his service weapon. He didn't greet Dr. Finch or offer any professional courtesy. He simply began, "Hey, you, I need to see some ID." His voice was flat, devoid of any tone other than command. The word "you" hung in the air, stripping away identity and reducing the man before him to a mere object of suspicion. Several patrons at nearby tables glanced over, their curiosity piqued by the sudden intrusion of law enforcement into the tranquil space. Dr. Finch, however, showed no sign of alarm. He slowly closed his laptop, the soft click of the magnetic latch the only sound for a moment. "Good afternoon, officer. Is there a problem?" His voice was calm, measured, and respectful, a stark contrast to Sullivan's abrasive opening. The officer's eyes narrowed slightly. "We got a call about suspicious activity. People using the Wi-Fi without making a purchase. I need to see your receipt and your ID." The narration of this event, as documented in the subsequent Internal Affairs Report, IA 23-441, would state with clinical certainty. A full review of dispatch logs from 12 p.m. to 3 p.m. on March 14, 2023, confirms no 911 or non-emergency calls were placed regarding the daily grind. Officer Sullivan's stated probable cause was a fabrication. Unfazed, Dr. Finch reached into the inner pocket of his suit jacket and produced a slim leather wallet. From it, he extracted not his driver's license, but a neatly folded receipt. He placed it on the table. "Here is my receipt, officer. The purchase was for $14.75, made approximately 20 minutes ago. As for my identification, under state law, I am not required to provide it unless you have a reasonable, articulable suspicion that I have committed, am committing, or am about to commit a crime. Do you have such a suspicion?" He didn't phrase it as a challenge, but as a simple, factual inquiry. For Officer Sullivan, it was a slap in the face. The body cam audio registered a distinct increase in his respiration rate. He saw Finch's precise language not as the words of an informed citizen, but as the insolent backtalk of a criminal. He leaned forward, placing his palms flat on the table, invading Finch's personal space. "I don't need to explain myself to you. I am the law here. Now, you can either show me your ID like a good citizen, or I can make this a much bigger problem for you." His voice had dropped to a low growl, a promise of consequences. He was no longer asking, he was threatening. Dr. Finch did not flinch, nor did his expression change. He kept his hands in plain sight on the table, a deliberate gesture of non-aggression. His gaze remained steady, meeting the officer's glare without hostility. "Officer, I am trying to cooperate with you within the legal framework that governs your actions and protects my rights.
Your demand, without any stated cause for suspicion, is unlawful. I am respectfully declining to comply with an unlawful order." He was creating a perfect verbal record, each word chosen with the precision of a surgeon. His composure seemed to infuriate Sullivan even more. The young officer's face was beginning to flush with color, a tide of red creeping up from his collar. In his mind, this calm defiance was the ultimate sign of guilt and disrespect. "People like you always think you're above the law, don't you?" The phrase, loaded with unspoken prejudice, was the first clear verbalization of the bias that had been driving his actions from the moment he first laid eyes on Dr. Finch. The accusation was so baseless, so nakedly discriminatory, that a woman at the next table audibly gasped. Sullivan ignored her. His focus was entirely on the man who refused to be intimidated. His frustration, having found no purchase on Finch's unshakable calm, finally boiled over into a physical act. In a sudden, aggressive movement, Sullivan lunged forward. He didn't reach for Finch, but for his property. His hand slapped down hard on the lid of the sleek silver laptop. The sound, a sharp crack of plastic and metal, echoed through the now silent coffee shop. Dr. Finch's demeanor shifted instantly. The calm patience was replaced by a glacial coldness. His voice, when he spoke, had a new and final weight to it. "Officer, you have just committed assault and attempted damage to private property. This conversation is over." Sullivan, high on his own adrenaline and perceived power, let out a short, incredulous laugh. "The conversation is over when I say it's over." He jabbed a finger toward the door, his face a mask of rage. "I gave you an order. If you don't get up and leave now, I will physically remove you for loitering and resisting arrest. Do you understand me?" It was his final, catastrophic miscalculation. He had just escalated his behavior to a felony in front of a dozen witnesses and at least 3 active cameras. What would you do if you were in Dr. Finch's position? Would you comply to avoid conflict, or would you stand your ground for your rights? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories of documented justice. Dr. Finch met Officer Sullivan's ultimatum not with fear, but with the cold, unassailable clarity of the law. He leaned forward just slightly, his voice calm but audible enough to be captured perfectly by the officer's body cam microphone, a device now recording the evidence for his own prosecution. "Officer, for the record, you are ordering me to leave a private establishment where I am a paying customer, without presenting any probable cause for such an action. And you are threatening to use force. Is that your official statement?" Each word was a carefully laid brick in the legal wall that was about to collapse on the young officer. To Sullivan, however, this was not a citizen exercising his rights. It was the final, unbearable piece of insolence. The legal phrasing was like a foreign language he interpreted as pure mockery, a challenge from someone who thought he was smarter than the man with the badge. The officer's face, already flushed with anger, darkened to a deep crimson. The Internal Affairs Review, case number 92-C118, would later note that at this precise moment, Sullivan's actions transitioned from gross negligence to willful and malicious misconduct. He saw only one path forward: overwhelming force, validated by the arrival of more uniforms. He was done. "You want to play lawyer?" he sneered, his hand dropping from his weapon to the radio clipped to his shoulder vest. "Let's see how you do in a holding cell downtown." The narration of this moment, compiled from the multiple high-definition video sources, is chilling in its objectivity. The footage from CCTV Camera 2, a tight shot focused on the 2 men, captures the flicker of malice in Sullivan's eyes as he deliberately turns his back on Dr. Finch to make the call, a gesture of ultimate disrespect. Simultaneously, his own Axon Body 3 camera provides a crystal clear, unalterable audio log of the transmission that would seal his professional fate. He keyed the mic, the electronic chirp echoing in the silent coffee shop. "Dispatch, this is 7354, he broadcasted over the citywide channel, his voice a mask of professional urgency. "I have a hostile subject at 455 Main, the Bailey Grind, refusing to identify, refusing to comply with lawful orders, requesting immediate backup." He had just officially reported a crime that had never occurred, creating an indelible, time-stamped record of his own fabrication, a lie he was now transmitting to every officer on duty. He had invoked the full power of the department based on a fiction born of his own prejudice, utterly confident that the system would blindly validate his authority. The dispatcher's voice crackled back with professional detachment, confirming a patrol car was en route with a 3-minute ETA. The call was completed. The police were on their way. Sullivan ended the transmission with a sharp click, the sound punctuating the dead silence of the coffee shop. A thin, triumphant smile played on his lips. He turned back to Dr. Finch, his entire posture radiating an unassailable sense of victory. He had followed procedure, called for backup, and was now in complete control. The system he served was coming to back him up, to validate his authority and put this arrogant, non-compliant subject in his place. In his mind, the confrontation was over. All that remained was the paperwork. He saw not a man, but a problem solved, a lesson about to be taught. He crossed his arms over his chest, a gesture of finality, and waited. He expected fear, or perhaps a last-ditch attempt at pleading. He received neither. Dr. Finch did not shrink. Instead, with a calm that seemed to defy the very laws of the situation, he began a series of small, deliberate actions that would completely invert the universe of the room. He placed his hands flat on the table, palms down. He pushed his chair back from the table, the legs making a soft scraping sound on the polished concrete floor, a sound that seemed impossibly loud in the tense quiet. Then he rose. He did not rise quickly in defiance, nor slowly in submission. He rose with the measured grace of a man who owned not only the space he occupied, but the very moment itself. He was taller than Sullivan, a fact that now seemed significant as he looked down, not with condescension, but with a profound and unnerving stillness. "My name is Dr. Alastair Finch." The words were spoken calmly at a conversational volume, yet they landed with the force of a gavel strike. The name meant nothing to Sullivan at first, just a piece of useless information. He scoffed, a small dismissive sound. But Dr. Finch continued, his voice unwavering. "I am the senior partner at the law firm of Finch & Associates." A flicker of something, not yet fear, but uncertainty, entered Sullivan's eyes. The expensive suit, the articulate speech, it all clicked into a new, more dangerous context. This wasn't just some random person, this was a lawyer. The officer's smug confidence began to erode at the edges. "Last year, I represented the city in the reform litigation for your department." The CCTV camera focused on Sullivan's face captures the precise moment the blood drained from it. The confident smirk did not fade. It collapsed, replaced by a slack-jawed expression of pure, unadulterate shock. His body cam audio registered a sharp, audible intake of breath. The foundation of his authority had just been vaporized. Dr. Finch pressed on, his words now like surgical instruments, dissecting Sullivan's entire reality.
"Which means," he added, his gaze locking on to the officers, "I likely helped write the very regulations you are so flagrantly violating at this exact moment. You see, I know what constitutes an unlawful stop. I know the precise definition of assault by an officer. And I know the exact protocols for recording and preserving evidence, evidence which your own body camera and this shop's security system are currently capturing in high definition. Your name is Officer Ryan Sullivan, badge number 7354. Sullivan physically flinched, as if he had been struck. Hearing his own name and badge number recited back to him by this man was a profound violation of his perceived power.
You have 18 months of service and, according to publicly available records, 3 prior misconduct complaints filed against you, all of which were dismissed for lack of evidence. Unlike those, this one will stick. It was a checkmate delivered with the cold finality of a death sentence. The officer's face was now a pale, sweaty mask of terror. He looked around the coffee shop at the faces of the other patrons, all watching him, their expressions a mixture of awe and contempt. He was no longer the enforcer. He was the spectacle. He was trapped. Dr. Finch delivered the final prophetic blow. Officer Sullivan, in approximately 90 seconds, when your supervisors arrive in response to your fraudulent call, your career in law enforcement will be over. A distant wail, the faint cry of a siren, began to cut through the air. It was the sound of his future arriving, a future he had just set on fire. The reveal of an identity can dramatically shift a power dynamic. If you want to see the full documented fallout of Officer Sullivan's catastrophic mistake, make sure you like this video and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the consequences. The piercing wail of the approaching sirens grew from a distant cry to an overwhelming reality, arriving with the punctuality Dr. Finch had predicted. The sound sliced through the coffee shop's tense silence, a soundtrack to Officer Sullivan's dawning horror. 2 patrol cars, their blue and red lights flashing in a chaotic dance against the storefront window, screeched to a halt at the curb. The footage from CCTV Camera 1, a wide-angle lens covering the entrance, documents their arrival at 2:34 p.m., less than 2 minutes after Sullivan's fraudulent call. The first officer through the door was Sergeant Miller, a man in his late 40s with a weary, seen-it-all expression etched onto his face. He was followed immediately by a man whose presence instantly commanded the room. Captain Davies, the precinct commander, his uniform crisp, his movements economical and authoritative. They entered prepared for confrontation, their bodies coiled with the tension of responding to an officer in distress call involving a hostile subject. Captain Davis's eyes quickly scanned the interior, assessing threats, his gaze sweeping past the patrons and landing on the scene in the corner. He saw his rookie officer, Sullivan, standing rigidly, and then he saw the man Sullivan was facing. The tactical readiness in Davis's posture vanished, replaced by a sudden, visible shock of recognition that was so profound it bordered on disbelief. His shoulders dropped an inch, his mouth parting slightly. Dr. Finch? The name was not a question, but an exclamation of alarm. The tone was one of immediate and unmistakable deference. He completely bypassed his own subordinate, his entire focus locking on to the very man Sullivan had labeled a hostile threat. This was the moment of irrefutable public validation. The instant Sullivan's fabricated reality was shattered by the weight of his commander's recognition. Sullivan's face, already pale, turned a ghostly white. He tried to speak, to regain control of the narrative he had created. "Captain," he stammered, his voice thin and cracking. He was refusing to cooperate, being aggressive. Davies did not even glance at him. He took 2 steps forward, his attention fixed solely on the civil rights attorney. "Are you all right, doctor?" The question was loaded with implications, chief among them that he considered Dr. Finch the victim, not the aggressor. "I am fine, Captain," Dr. Finch replied, his voice a paradigm of calm. "However, your officer here has committed a series of flagrant policy violations, including assault. Fortunately for the subsequent investigation, his actions have been meticulously documented on his own body cam, as well as this establishment's comprehensive security system." Captain Davies finally turned to face Officer Sullivan. The look in the veteran commander's eyes was not the explosive anger of a superior who had been defied, but something far worse, a cold, calculating fury mixed with the profound exhaustion of a man who could already see the mountain of paperwork, the legal depositions, and the multi-million-dollar lawsuit blooming from this subordinate's catastrophic lack of judgment. He had seen this kind of recklessness before, but never so perfectly and publicly documented. The body cam footage from Sergeant Miller, who had now moved to flank Sullivan, captures what happened with chilling procedural clarity. Davis's voice was low, devoid of emotion, yet every word landed like a hammer blow in the silent room. "Sergeant," he commanded, his eyes never leaving Sullivan's terrified face, "relieve Officer Sullivan of his service weapon and his radio."
Now, the order was absolute. Miller moved with practiced efficiency, his hand unsnapping the retention strap on Sullivan's holster. The metallic click was unnaturally loud. Sullivan stood frozen, his arms limp at his sides, as the sergeant smoothly extracted the Glock 19 from his holster, a public and symbolic stripping of his authority. Miller then unclipped the radio from Sullivan's vest, severing his connection to the department. "Officer Sullivan," Davies continued in the same flat, lethal tone, "you are hereby placed on administrative leave, effective immediately. Sergeant Miller will escort you to the precinct. You will surrender your badge and identification. Your tour is over." The finality of the phrase hung in the air. This was not a suspension, it was an execution. Miller placed a firm hand on Sullivan's arm and began leading him toward the door. A silent walk of shame past a dozen pairs of eyes that now saw him not as an officer, but as a disgraced fool. As the door jingled shut behind them, Captain Davies turned back to Dr. Finch, his expression a mask of strained professionalism. "Doctor, on behalf of the department, I sincerely apologize. We will be conducting a full and transparent internal affairs investigation. All evidence will be preserved." He pulled a business card from his shirt pocket and extended it. "Please contact me directly with anything you need." It was a gesture of appeasement, a desperate attempt at damage control, but it was far too late. The damage was already done, and the cost was about to be calculated. The aftermath for Ryan Sullivan was not a dramatic explosion, but a cold, systematic dismantlement. A process as procedural and unforgiving as the law he had so arrogantly claimed to represent. The Internal Affairs investigation, Case 92-C-118, was a mere formality, its conclusion foregone before the first interview was even conducted. The combined video evidence from Sullivan's own body cam and the coffee shop's 3 high-definition angles created a perfect 360-degree diorama of his misconduct, leaving no room for interpretation, denial, or the usual union-backed obfuscation. The final report, a 42-page document of damning, time-stamped facts, concluded that Officer Sullivan had engaged in a pattern of behavior constituting gross negligence, abuse of authority, official misconduct, and assault under color of law, all stemming from what was described in clinical terms as demonstrable and unsubstantiated selection bias. His termination was immediate and absolute. On April 18, 2023, just over a month after the incident, he was handed a 1-page letter informing him his employment was terminated for cause, effective immediately. With that single piece of paper, his annual salary of $68,000 vanished. The $8,500 he had contributed to his pension fund over 18 months were forfeited due to the nature of his dismissal. Most critically, the state's Peace Officer Standards and Training Board permanently revoked his certification, a professional death sentence ensuring he could never again wear a badge or carry a gun in any law enforcement capacity in any state in the nation. The criminal charges followed swiftly. The district attorney's office, facing immense public pressure and irrefutable video evidence, indicted him on 1 count of third-degree assault and 1 count of official misconduct. He accepted a plea deal to avoid a trial, resulting in a sentence of 2 years of probation and 200 hours of community service. But the conviction left him with a permanent criminal record, a scarlet letter that would bar him from any position of trust for the rest of his life. But it was the civil proceedings that truly quantified the cost of his prejudice. Dr. Alastair Finch, represented by his own formidable law firm, filed a civil rights lawsuit against both Sullivan and the city.
The city's attorneys, recognizing the indefensible nature of the case and the catastrophic public relations damage a trial would inflict, moved quickly to settle. The final settlement was a staggering $3 million. While the city's insurance carrier covered half of the amount, the other $1.5 million fell directly upon Ryan Sullivan. The city's indemnification clause, which normally protects officers from personal liability, was voided by the internal affairs finding of willful and malicious misconduct. The judgment was not an abstract figure. It was a financial anchor chained to him for life. His meager savings were wiped out. A court order placed a lien on any future property he might acquire, and, most devastatingly, implemented a 25% wage garnishment on all future earnings until the $1.5 million debt was paid in full. The man who wore a badge and commanded authority now found himself working a series of minimum wage jobs, stocking shelves at a grocery store overnight, clearing tables at a diner. From every paycheck, a quarter of his earnings was automatically diverted to the man he had tried to humiliate. He became a local pariah, his face from the viral CCTV footage instantly recognizable. Friends from the force stopped returning his calls. He was a cautionary tale, a ghost of a career that had barely begun. Meanwhile, Dr. Alastair Finch's life continued, untouched and in fact enhanced.
He donated his entire portion of the settlement to a nonprofit organization dedicated to police accountability and reform. He was seen weeks later in federal court eloquently arguing a complex civil liberties case, his reputation as a brilliant and unshakable advocate for justice cemented even further. Occasionally, he still visited the daily grind, sitting at the same corner table, a portrait of the calm competence that had won the day. The justice delivered was not just punitive, it was perfectly symmetrical. An act of baseless aggression, born of a need to exert power, had resulted in the complete and total loss of all power. Was the lesson learned? Did Ryan Sullivan, as he handed a customer their change, finally understand that the uniform was a symbol of public trust, not a license for personal prejudice? One can only hope that the endless daily cost of his mistake serves as a permanent and irrefutable answer. Have you ever witnessed or heard of a case where video evidence led to such definitive justice? Share your story in the comments below, and if you believe in the power of accountability, share this story with others.